True scary story. A witch on the roof. Hello. Good evening, everyone. My name is Julio. And although I haven't been listening for very long, I want to tell you something that my family never forgot. It didn't happen to me. It happened to my parents. But they told me about it so many times it seemed like I was there too. When they moved to the city many years ago, they had to live as best they could. Houses with dirt floors, dampness everywhere, and holes in the walls that let in the cold at night. They never complained because it was the first time that they could afford. But they did have a very bad time at the beginning. After that, someone offered them a place to stay in another house near that same area. It wasn't pretty, and the strange thing wasn't the peeling paint or the old windows, or even the fact that a workshop appeared nearby. The windows were so high that you couldn't see outside. The strangest thing was how high the ceiling was. The owner warned them when she handed them the key to stay on the first floor, not to go upstairs, that there was nothing there, upstairs. And that, of course, caught their attention, because there was indeed an old staircase cement without a railing. But there it was, between the kitchen and the living room. Without reaching, nothing dark. Above ended a metal door. It was locked, and it was clear that it hadn't been opened for a long time because it was covered in dust, cobwebs, and rust marks like water seeping in from inside. And from the first night there were signs of what they were about to experience, and that was beyond the terrible cold. What was I doing? You see, my mom was left alone, and my dad got back from his house at 3 in the morning. He says he got off the bus, as if nothing had happened, and walked the 6 block. It was dark, all the way to the house. When she entered, she found my mom sitting down trembling on the edge of the bed, crying with fear. She could barely, she whispered, as if afraid of being overheard, that she was sure someone was upstairs. It was a person. Something was walking around. My dad tried to calm her down. He told her it was probably just the sheets of metal moving in the wind, but she insisted that I couldn't do something like that. The footsteps were clearly audible. They were, and not with quick steps, but with slow, patient steps, letting themselves be heard, going around and around and around. My dad came out to watch, but from down below he couldn't see. Nothing could be distinguished. Only the extremely high black ceiling. There were no stairs outside, nor any way to be. There were no stairs to go up, nor any access from the first floor. And there were no stairs outside either. There were no nearby fences, no houses attached. There was nothing within a 60-meter radius. The following nights were the same. My dad was strong, but my mom hardly slept. I always had to wait alone until the early hours of the morning for my dad to arrive. The footsteps returned. And the worst part was when it wasn't just footsteps anymore. Sometimes it sounded like a dragging, like something heavy moving. And one night laughter that wasn't afraid to hide from just like the footsteps. What I know was up there wanted to be noticed. And my dad finally won. One Thursday at 2 hours 30 minutes in the morning, when the footsteps sounded again, just as he arrived, he went up the stairs and banged on the metal door with all his might. The laughter stopped, the footsteps too. Then he went downstairs and stood listening from where he stood. The first floor was silent. Nothing else was heard all night. Not a rustle or a sound moving. The next day, he asked for tools at the construction site where he worked. That night, when he heard another noise up there, he went back up. He forced the lock with a hammer and a screwdriver. The door opened, and what he saw was nothing. An empty room in the middle of the rooftop, without a roof, without a window. Without anything, completely unfinished, with no sign of anyone there, and no sign of how someone could have gotten on. But my mom wasn't reassured. On the contrary, she remained stressed, but at least they had a few quiet nights. For the first time they were able to sleep, straight through. However, one Saturday, after visiting some friends, very late, as they were walking towards the house, they saw her. They saw her for the first time. My dad says that at first he thought it was a bundle, a sack, something forgotten that seemed to be coming out of the ceiling. But no, it was a face from the ceiling peeking over the edge, the face of a very old lady with white hair looking down at them. When they realized she was watching them, the old woman hid backwards as if she were crawling or slithering away. It slid quickly across the ceiling, and that night they didn't want to go in. No Faye dared to take one more step towards their home. They turned back without looking. They arrived at the prey. They drove back to their friend's house and asked to stay the night, and luckily they were able to. They agreed. The next day they went to talk to the owner and ask her what was there. Upstairs they asked who or what lived on that roof. They were told that someone had forced their way in the door. They went up to the roof and saw what they saw there. The woman got angry. First she yelled at them for opening the door he had specifically forbidden them from doing. Then he told them they had to leave as soon as possible. Possible without further explanation. And they accepted without argument. Only they wanted to take their things and leave. When they had already taken what little they had, and they were walking with difficulty towards the road, when some local children passed by and asked them, "Did you live in the witch's house?" My dad says he tried not to listen. That's right, but the children continued. The witch lives on the roof. Sometimes it peeks out, sometimes leaping high to land on other roofs, and snatching kittens or dogs. That's why they throw stones at it, that he shouldn't come near, so he doesn't hurt us. They said nothing more. They asked no more questions. They went on to play. Many years later, I met the story comes from my parents' conversations. They both told it separately, and very different. My mom never wanted to talk about it. The memory hurt too much. My dad made her talk about it more. Exciting, more entertaining. But both told it with the same details. Exactly. My mom is no longer here today. And since then my dad kind of stopped telling her stories. But he occasionally mentions her, in a single comment to describe her, to describe that moment in her life. That memory refers to her as the house of the witch on the roof.